The Unfiltered Human on the Fringe, Episode 3. When fire is the only language left, suppressed anger, righteous fury, trauma responses, and rage as a boundary, exploring the sacred shadow of fire. A language of fire. There is a kind of silence that isn't peaceful. It's full of swallowed words, unshed tears, and unmet needs. Anger, when not allowed to breathe, often becomes that silence. And yet, when fire finally breaks through, it burns. For many of us, especially those taught to stay calm, stay polite, stay small, rage becomes a last resort. A boundary, a scream, a language. In this episode, we explore the layered experience of anger. Not just the explosive outbursts that culture condemns, but the slow burn of injustice, the pain of not being seen, and the fury inherited from generations past. We'll walk through personal stories, cultural conditioning, and psychological frameworks to better understand how anger, when recognized and integrated, can transform from something dangerous into something sacred. This episode is part of our ongoing arc on shadow emotions, those feelings we are taught to fear, suppress, or disown. As always, I'll share real experiences and reflective insight, not from a place of authority, but from a willingness to ask, what's happening underneath the surface? Let's begin. The early embers, childhood and conditioned anger reflection. I remember being about 4 or 5 years old at my grandfather's birthday party. I stood right in front of him, singing Happy Birthday, and yet later I was accused of not singing at all. I was crushed. I knew I had participated. I wanted to be seen. But instead I was dismissed and blamed. The adults didn't believe me. I stormed off, upset, and instead of receiving comfort or clarification, I was pressured to apologize. No one ever apologized to me for false accusations. They only remembered my reaction. It may seem minor, but that moment planted a seed that my truth wouldn't be acknowledged unless I submitted, even when I was not in the wrong, as my reaction surrendered my innocence. Context insight. Psychologist Alice Miller, in the drama of The Gifted Child, explains that early invalidation, especially around emotional expression, teaches children to disconnect from their authentic anger. When the child's perspective is not believed, they internalize the idea that their truth must be suppressed for acceptance. Insight prompt. Anger is often born from the pain of not being seen. Before it erupts, it quietly collects evidence. Self-reflection. Can you recall a childhood moment where your anger was dismissed or punished, and what message it gave you about expressing emotion? Silent eruptions. The cost of suppressed anger reflection. Throughout life, I've suppressed anger many times. In situations where I didn't feel safe enough to express it, I'd withdraw. I'd shut down, become anxious, even physically unwell. It took years to notice the cycle, the internal boiling, the anxiety at potential eruption, the guilt after expressing myself too strongly or not at all. These days, I try to honor those feelings. I speak up more clearly, even when it makes others uncomfortable. I've learned that being silent often hurts me more than risking honesty. Theory insight. Suppressing anger activates the sympathetic nervous system, our fight or flight response. When anger is internalized, it may transform into anxiety, depression, or autoimmune symptoms. Somatic psychology emphasizes the importance of safe emotional expression to avoid physiological dysregulation. Insight prompt. Silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's anger trapped without language. Self-reflection. Where in your life have you traded peace for suppression? What did it cost you? The flashpoint, a story of righteous or misunderstood fury reflection. As a young child, I had a heated argument with my mum on one occasion. I don't recall what triggered it, only that she wouldn't respond. She went silent. The more I begged for connection, the more I was ignored. My anger erupted. I screamed, cried, raged, and yet nothing changed. That moment shaped how I navigated emotion for years. I learned to pacify myself, retreat inward, and hide the fire. Cultural insight. In many households, silence is used as a tool of emotional control. Psychologist Dr. Lindsay Gibson refers to this as emotional neglect masked as calm. When caregivers disconnect in moments of conflict, the child internalizes the idea that their emotions are too much, or worse, unworthy of response. Insight prompt. Sometimes rage is not rebellion, it's a desperate plea to be loved. Self-reflection. Have you ever had a moment where your anger felt not just justified, but essential, and yet it was dismissed? inherited fire, family, gender, and generational rage reflection. My father was raised in a militarized, often violent household. That trauma echoed through him. I saw it in his sudden outbursts, his struggle to connect. My mother, raised in a stricter Italian family, dealt with neglect differently through silence, through enduring. These patterns were passed down to me. I wasn't always included in family gatherings. I noticed who was favored, who was dismissed, and it hurt. There were invisible rules about who got to speak, who got to be heard. Theoretical context. Intergenerational trauma theory, Yehuda 2002, shows how emotional regulation patterns, especially anger expression, are often inherited unconsciously. Cultural norms around gendered anger, e.g., men must be strong but not vulnerable, women must be kind but not assertive, compound the suppression. Insight prompt. Sometimes the fire we carry isn't ours. It's inherited from those who never got to express it, self-reflection. What stories around anger were passed down in your family? Who was allowed to express it and who wasn't? The body remembers, somatic tension and stored heat reflection. I've always felt a strange physical tension when around my grandfather, especially after being accused unfairly as a child. It's like my body holds that memory even decades later. The same with my father's volatility. He loved me, but his unresolved trauma made him hard to reach. I now understand that my body was reacting to the unspoken emotional violence long before my mind caught up. Somatic insight. According to Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, the body keeps the score. Trauma, especially emotional trauma, embeds itself in the nervous system. Muscle tension, gastrointestinal issues, and panic attacks are all common expressions of stored anger. Insight prompt. Your body speaks what your mouth cannot. Tension is often the truth unspoken. Self-reflection. Where do you feel anger in your body? How might that be your nervous system asking to be heard? Rage as boundary. Sacred anger versus destructive fire reflection. Over time, I've learned to discern between reactive rage and protective anger. If someone tries to provoke me, I ask myself, is this a boundary being crossed or just my ego reacting? I no longer feel the need to win arguments or be right. My truth doesn't require performance. I'm more comfortable now saying no without guilt. Philosophical framing. Author and spiritual teacher Clarissa Pinkola Estes speaks of anger as a powerful, life-giving force when harnessed properly. It is not inherently destructive. It becomes sacred when rooted in truth, used to protect what matters, not to punish what offends. Insight prompt. Anger doesn't have to be loud to be powerful. A quiet no can be louder than a scream. Self-reflection. When has your anger protected you or revealed something sacred worth defending? Final reflections. Where are you with anger now? Reflection. I'm in a much better place with anger now. I've learned to recognize it not as something shameful, but as an honest internal signal. I can feel it arise in my body, in the breath, in the gut, in the chest, and instead of reacting, I listen. I've stopped seeking validation from others to feel calm or worthy. My no feels grounded, not aggressive. I no longer suppress to please. I express to stay whole. Integration insight. Healing anger doesn't mean never feeling it. It means building a relationship with it, one that's honest, curious, and compassionate, where it becomes less about reaction and more about response, less about fire for destruction, more about fire for illumination. Insight prompt. Anger is not a flaw, it's a faculty. When it's respected, it can become your compass. Self-reflection. How could your anger become something sacred, not silenced, but respected? Fire as truth. Thank you for joining me for episode 3 of the Unfiltered Human on the Fringe. This episode has explored not just anger, but the roots that feed it, childhood moments of dismissal, the generational wounds we carry, and the silence that simmers beneath the surface, and the sacred possibility of anger when channeled consciously. If this conversation stirred something in you, don't rush to soothe it. Sit with it, journal about it, let it inform you. Because anger, when listened to, isn't the enemy. It's often the protector of your unmet needs. In a world where silence is often rewarded, may your fire become your truth. Until next time, stay grounded, stay awake, and stay human. James Miller. If you found value in today's episode, you may also be interested in my broader project, The Inversiverse, a series exploring the hidden architecture of perception, identity, control, and consciousness. Across 20 episodes, the Inversiverse dissects indoctrination, language, media manipulation, dark psychology, belief systems, and the evolution of self in the digital age. You can find all episodes of the Inversiverse on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, and Substack by searching this place called Earth. These ideas aren't shared to convince you, but to invite you to think, feel, and perceive more consciously in a world designed to keep you distracted. Overview of the Inversiverse: a journey through the mirrors of mind, culture, and control. Episodes 1 to 3 introduce foundational ideas around indoctrination, perception, and manipulation. Episode 4 explores how language, symbols, and cultural norms are used to shape thought. Episode 5 investigates control systems, media narratives, and the illusion of choice. Episodes 6 to 7 dives into collective belief structures and the psychology of mass behavior. Episode 8 focuses on marketing, control theory, game theory, and critical thinking. Episode 9 covers love, relationships, human mating, gender dynamics, and red-blue pill ideologies. Episode 10 unpacks dark psychology, the occult, Satanism, and the dark triad personality types. Episode 11 the simulated self examines identity, ego, and the rise of post-human consciousness. Episode 12 the spell of the mind inquires into language, illusion, and physiology of thought. Episode 13 conscious seduction journeys through persuasion, propaganda, and the unseen forces of the mind. Episode 14 the myth of sanity sheds light on madness, genius, and the edge of perception. Episode 15 the algorithmic mind probes influence, identity, and invisible architects. Episode 16 the noise of knowing reveals overload, obsession, and the age of infinite information. Episode 17 belief machines delves further into language, desire, and the engine of reality. Episode 18 submerged signals examines how the unseen shapes the self. Episode 19 the alchemy within traces, food, frequency, and the forgotten intelligence of the body. Episode 20 encoded flesh scrutinizes and opens up to the forgotten language of the DNA and biological consciousness.